And of course he played it up. Oh, it's the best model. It's 20 horse, power steering, 2-speed axle. I'm like, come on, Brett. You didn't see all that from the freaking school bus. Sure enough, I went there. It was a 20 horse model and it had the power steering. Welcome back, friends, to Build a Lot Acres. In today's exclusive Tractor Talk series, we're going to have a real special episode for you. We're going to rely on me and Brett's memory, and we're going to try to recount every single garden tractor I've ever owned.
Stay tuned.
All right, so going back, way back, I was around 11 years old, and our good friends of my parents had what I believe they bought brand new. I think it was a 1978, if I'm not mistaken, Sears ST12. Were mustard yellow and white. It was 12 horsepower. It was a Sears Suburban style tractor. It was a real rugged little tractor, and the gentleman that I'm referring to ended up getting a new tractor, so he gave that tractor to my father, and somehow I was able to finagle it for myself. So my very first tractor was actually a Sears ST12, and I believe it was a 1978.
So let's skip forward in time several years to 2008. When my father picked up a 1972 Case 446, which he had actually drove about five and a half hours each way just to pick up.
Yeah, I went up to northern Maine to get this tractor with my wife. Admittingly, I knew very little about the Case Ingersoll line. The story behind it actually goes, I was in a small engine shop here in Massachusetts with my brother. I had never really heard of the Case high wheelers. And we were in this small engine shop, like you said, it was around 2008. I saw this high wheeler sitting on the floors of 4000 series, and I was like, holy moly, I've never seen something like that. The square hood, the rugged looks, the steel construction, the huge back tires, the 3-point hitch. I mean, it was just incredible. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And I knew at that point I had to have a Case Ingersoll high wheel tractor. So when I got home that night, I went to my computer, I started researching them a little bit, learned a little about them, and then I ended up going on to Craigslist, and I found the 446 in Maine.
Which my father very quickly realized was a terrible machine. My father did not like it. And he ended up selling it not too long after the fact.
Yeah, I think I had it like literally 1 or 2 days. So I don't want to badmouth the guy I bought it from, but it was kind of a lipstick on a pig kind of a deal. He cobbled a lot of the things together, and it just really wasn't a great tractor. So I almost had immediate buyer's regret. So I ended up looking again, and I found a really nice looking 448, which Brett happens to be sitting on today. That was in Rhode Island, so much closer to my house. It was still probably about an hour away, but it wasn't 5.5 hours. And I ended up buying that before I sold the 446. And I was kind of a little nervous because I spent quite a bit of money on both. I paid about $1,600 for that. And I want to say I paid around the same for the 446. So I was out over $3,000 in tractors. So I listed the 446, and luckily after maybe a week or two on the ads, I was able to sell that tractor. So my next tractor was actually this 1971 Sears SS14. They were only made for that 1 year, and this, like I said, I had the other Sears when I was a kid. I ended up acting like a stupid kid. I ended up spray painting it black with one of my friends, and we ended up putting too much oil in it and ended up having some issues. So I no longer have that tractor, but I always told myself someday I would avenge that Sears and I would get another Sears, and I'll be damned if I didn't do it with this 1971 SS14. So I bought this for my cousin who lives in the same town as I do, about 10 minutes away, for $250. We did do some work to it. My brother helped me get a few things going on it, and it's been a workhorse ever since. We've told countless stories about this tractor, and it's still on the original 1-cylinder 14 horsepower engine, and this thing has been a real workhorse for us over the years.
Most definitely.
All right, so what was next, son?
That was your 1993 Craftsman GT6000. Which I actually remember I was going to a birthday party that day, and my father had passed it while I was driving to said birthday party.
Do you remember it like it was yesterday?
I do, and I remember then going home to get the trailer to get that tractor that same day.
That GT6000 actually was a really nice tractor. It had a deep rumble from that Kohler Magnum engine. It was 18 horsepower, and it was pretty similar to the Sears SS14. It had a 6-speed transmission, a high-low tranny, and I had this typical 23-inch rear tires. It was really a nice tractor. I had a 48-inch snowplow for it. I did a number of storms with it. I did end up selling it because they just had too many tractors, which we're going to discuss a little more later in the video.
The next tractor my father ended up purchasing, I'm sitting on right now, and it's now my 1985 Case Ingersoll 220, which my father ended up purchasing from Connecticut. And he had only purchased it because in the picture he had seen that it had wheel weights on it in one of the pictures.
Yeah, it was actually an interesting story. So I could just see half of the wheel weights in the picture. They were the D8 cast iron wheel weights. And I got there, and there's no wheel weights. They said, where's the wheel weights that were on the tractor? He tried pulling a fast one saying there were no wheel weights. And I said, I saw wheel weights in the picture. That's half the reason I want the tractor. Without them, I'm not interested. So he ended up bringing me into his garage, and he had taken them off. And he tried to sell them separately, but I ended up getting the whole package with the weights. And this tractor was in rough shape. It had a red metal seat. It had bald, cracked tires on all sides. The grill was all faded and dented. I've done quite a bit of work to this tractor, and I ended up selling it to my son here.
Nope. Sold it to Uncle Ben.
So then the story goes, I ended up selling this tractor to my brother, who ended up selling it to
me,
who still has it to this day. All right, so the next few tractors kind of blend together. It gets a little fuzzy. I don't remember exact order, but I'm going to tell you all the different ones I bought. So I bought an 83, it was a late 1983 black frame Case Ingersoll 448. I used that for a number of years. I ended up selling that to a really good guy down in Connecticut. He also has a YouTube channel where I believe he has that tractor in some of his videos. His name is Case Ingersoll Gilbert, and the name of his tractor channel, if I'm not mistaken, is Case Ingersoll Tractors Northeast. So please go check him out. So I had that tractor, I'm gonna say probably for 4 or 5 years, maybe 6 years, I don't know. And in that time, I also bought a Case Ingersoll high loader, 648, which was a Case Ingersoll high loader series. It had a bucket and it had power steering. It was a nice little tractor, but I ended up selling that to a gentleman down in Rhode Island. And after that, I bought, let's see.
Would it be the 214 or the 214?
I had a Massey. I went up to Maine. I went and saw a real nice guy I knew from the forums, and I bought a Massey Ferguson 214, which Case Ingersoll built those Massey tractors in the early 90s for a few years, and it was basically a 3014 Ingersoll in Massey paint, decals, and then a little different shaped hood. But so I owned that tractor for quite a while. Ended up also, I sold that one to Case Ingersoll Gilbert, and I don't know if he still has it. Let me know if you're watching. But after that, I had a Massey Ferguson 218 GTX, which I really bought just for the 3-point hitch. It had the Baby Moon hubcaps. It had a few nice things on it that I ended up selling separately. I really just bought it as a parts tractor. I ended up selling that.
That was a hoopty. That was a real hoopty. That was a...
Yeah. So what else did I have? I
had
had
a 226.
Oh, the Gilson.
Oh, yeah.
I had a Gilson. Oh, I'm trying to remember what model that was.
God, that was early. That was...
I don't know. I really don't remember the model of the Gilson. Maybe like a S12 or something like that. It was orange and white. It was a real heavy tractor. It didn't run, didn't have an engine. I'm not even sure why I bought it. I think I paid like $75 for it, if I'm not mistaken. But I had the Gilson. What else did I have?
You had the 226. You had the John Deere 214.
Oh yeah, I had a John Deere 214. That was the only John Deere I've ever had. I got that from a plumber that we used to use. And I ended up selling that John Deere to my brother, who used it for several years mowing. And then he sold it. I also owned a Case 226, which did not run. I sold that to a local guy who I believe put a Predator engine in that from Harbor Freight. And I think he had it listed for quite a while in the classifieds. I'm sure he ended up selling it. This was a number of years ago, but what else did I have, Brett?
I
feel like I'm forgetting. Oh, the PowerMax.
The PowerMax and
the
Sunstar.
The one I'm sitting on. That would be a good one to mention.
Which that's actually a really funny story. So with the Sunstar, it's actually kind of a funny story because I was in the 8th grade and I was coming home with the school bus one day and I see the Sunstar just sitting outside, just in someone's driveway. And I flipped out, like, because it's like the thing of myth.
I can just picture his little face pressed against the glass of the school bus window, drooling as he looks out.
I was.
But I gotta give the little guy credit. How many kids do you know? What year was this?
2018?
How many kids in 2017, 18 would be in the school bus, not on their phone, but looking out for deals for their father to get with garden tractors? So I gotta give it to the little guy. He came home from the school bus and he couldn't tell me quick enough that he saw the screen puff of a Sunstar. And of course he played it up. Oh, it's the best model. It's 20 horse, power steering, 2-speed axle. I'm like, come on, Brett. You didn't see all that from the freaking school bus. Sure enough, I went there. It was a 20 horse model and it had the power steering. It's the top model Sunstar that they made. And it was the original owner. It had very low hours. Believe it or not, the guy actually bought a new, real low quality Cub Cadet garden tractor. I say garden tractor, it's really a lawn tractor, but he was gonna use this to like mow his hill, just like the rough area with all like the saplings and trees. And he was gonna leave this outside. I about cried when I heard that story. I said, no way, I'm buying the tractor. So I ended up securing the deal.
I believe it was $750, $800, something like that. You got it for an absolute steal.
Yeah, wasn't it? I don't think it was even that. I think it was 700. Maybe it was 800. I don't know, but it was somewhere around there, $700, $800. But it had like 250 or 300 hours on it, and it was like, you know, early 90s model, maybe 91 to 92, somewhere around there. So, and Sunstar is actually one of the tractors that I always wanted, because when I was a kid, my mother ran a daycare. 2 of the kids she had lived about half a mile down the street. Their father had a Sunstar. His actually was orange and white, and it had like the yellow, looked like a sun on the hood. And I remember thinking as a kid, we went over there for a barbecue or something, and I thought, wow, that's a big, impressive looking garden tractor. And just like when I went to the shop with my brother and saw the high wheeler, I was kind of hooked. So I knew someday I wanted to have a Simplicity Sunstar of my own, and I'll be damned if I didn't do it. I actually saw one of these tractors at a guy in Connecticut. His name is Ken. He had like a small engine place right next to Con Tractor. If you're from the area, maybe you know where I'm talking about, but he had one of these and I saw it. I said, wow, that's a big tractor. I've never seen a PowerMax before. So I ended up getting one. This did run when I got it. Unfortunately, it hasn't run in quite a while. I'm hoping to get it up and running again. For those that don't know, PowerMaxes are about the biggest garden tractor that's ever been made. They made these under a few different brands. They had, obviously, the Simplicity. This one's a 90-20. They offered these in 16.5 to 19.5 horsepower models. They also offered them under Alice Chalmers. And they also offered them under Montgomery Ward's as the Twin 20. So these have a 3-range gearbox, hydrostatic transmission. They had 60-inch decks. They weigh about 1,300 pounds dry. They have huge rear tires. They had 3 different tire choices, front and rear. I actually did a video on this tractor a number of years ago in this garage that I'm going to link right now. So if I'm not mistaken, I think that's every garden tractor I've ever owned. The most I've ever owned at one time, I believe, was 7. And then I also had the Ford and the Coyote. So I had 9 tractors at one time. I believe that was the most. Let's just say Mrs. Build-A-Lot wasn't the biggest fan of having that many tractors, so I did sell one a lot. And technically the 220 is not mine. So at this time I have 4 garden tractors and 2 bigger tractors. So I went from 9 to 6. So I'm slowly trying to minimize, because every tractor you have is an engine you're going to maintain, parts, and it gets expensive. Plus you got to store them somewhere. So I don't like keeping things outside. I know a lot of people would store tractors outside, but I always try to keep them inside out of the weather. And I'm sure 9 to a lot of people was probably a baby number. A lot of people watching probably have had way more tractors than that. In fact, let me know in the comments, how many garden tractors have you ever had at one time? Let's see who has the most. So we hope you guys enjoyed this tractor talk. Hopefully we didn't forget any tractors. One of us will probably think of one tonight when we're laying in bed. But we do hope you guys enjoyed today's video.
We'll see you guys in the next one.